The girl on the auction block, the sky above the slave market was gray with smoke and dust. The crowd was loud, shouting, bidding, laughing as if it was some kind of festival, but what stood at the center was not something to celebrate, it was a girl. Chained from neck to ankles, her skin was pale under the dirt, her lips cracked, her eyes half open, but still awake. She looked different from the other slaves. Her skin had a strange glow like silver under the grime. Her hair, long and tangled, looked like metal wires, and her ears were pointed like blades. The trader beside her was a fat creature with 6 arms and 1 eye. He slapped her back hard, making her fall to her knees. 1 bottle of liquor, he shouted, raising a rusty bottle in his hand. This broken thing for just 1 bottle. Who wants her? He laughed, and others laughed too. She's useless, no voice, no power, no future. People moved on to the next cage, ignoring her. Some even threw food at her like she was an animal. The girl didn't cry. Her face was blank, like she had already died long ago, but one man didn't move. A human, tall and silent, stood behind the crowd. He wore an old coat and a wide hat covering most of his face. His boots were dusty and his hands were rough, but his eyes behind dark glasses stayed fixed on the girl. He slowly stepped forward. The crowd looked at him, confused. A human here? Not many came to this part of the galaxy. The trader grinned, showing yellow broken teeth. Ah, a human. You want her. For real. Liquor, that's the price. The human didn't speak. He looked at the girl for a long time. Her head didn't rise, but her fingers twitched very slightly. He saw it. He noticed. He took something from his coat, a box small and metal. He placed it on the table beside the trader. Not liquor, the human said. His voice was calm, deep, smooth. The trader looked at the box, then back at the man. What is this? Some kind of joke? Open it, the human said. The trader opened the box. Inside was a small cube glowing with blue light. The crowd gasped. A power cell, rare, valuable, more than 20 bottles of liquor. Are you mad? This thing is worth more than 10 like her. The trader said, his grin gone. She's not like them, the human replied, still watching her. The trader laughed, but nervously. All right, human, you got yourself a deal. Chains were unhooked. The girl collapsed face down onto the cold metal floor, expecting pain. But it didn't come. No kick, no collar. The human knelt beside her and placed a cloth under her head, then stood back. Can she walk? He asked. The trader shrugged. No promises. Human took a soft pack from his coat. Inside was water, clean and cold. He held it near her lips. The girl's eyes opened slowly. Her mouth moved weakly. She drank. Then he did something no one in that place had done for her in years. He spoke gently. You are safe now. The girl's body didn't move, but her eyes filled with something not seen before. Confusion. He lifted her carefully, not like a master lifting a slave, but like a person helping another person. She was light, too light. Bones felt like feathers in his arms. Her head rested against his chest. As he walked away, the crowd went quiet. Some whispered. Some just stared. The trader watched with narrowed eyes. Rubbing his fat hands once they were out of the market, he placed her on a seat inside a small transport ship. The door closed. The engines hummed. She still said nothing, just stared at the wall. He handed her a clean blanket and some more water, then sat across from her. You don't have to speak, he said. Not yet, but you're not property anymore. Understand that life is over. Her eyes moved slowly toward him. They were golden, not bright gold, but dull like old coins. Her lips parted, but no sound came. He didn't press her. Instead, he leaned back, closed his eyes for a second, and waited outside. The ship stars began to appear. The auction block was far behind, but deep inside the girl's mind, something had moved like a small spark in ashes. Question, why did he do this? And deep in the human's chest, something pulled at his heart, because he had seen those eyes before. Not hers exactly, but close. Not everything can be explained. Not everything starts with words, but this story had just begun. Asterisk. The human who said no. Ship flew through quiet space, but inside the silence between the two was heavy. The girl sat wrapped in a soft blanket, her silver skin showing under the tears in her old clothes. Her fingers held the water pack tightly, but she hadn't drunk more. Her golden eyes kept glancing at the human who now sat in the pilot's chair, hands relaxed, eyes forward. She had expected control orders, maybe even chains again. That's how it always worked. By the slave, use the slave. But this human was doing nothing like that. He hadn't touched her in a bad way, hadn't even asked her name. The engines made a soft humming sound while stars passed outside the window. She finally took a small sip of water and watched him again. Human stood up slowly and walked over to her. His boots made soft sounds on the floor. He knelt near her, but not too close, and placed a pack of food between them. "You don't have to eat now," he said, "but it's here if you want it." She looked at the pack, then at his face, still unreadable beneath the shadows of his hat. "Why?" she whispered. Her voice was dry and rough, like it hadn't been used in years. He didn't answer right away. He sat beside the wall with a sigh and finally took off his hat. His face was tired, older than she expected, not cruel, just worn by time and something else. "I've seen eyes like yours before," he said quietly. She blinked, confused. He smiled. "A long time ago. I met someone who looked ready to give up too, but she didn't. She fought back even when everything was taken from her." "Did she survive?" the girl asked, barely louder than before. He looked down for a moment and said, "No." The silence returned. The girl didn't know why his answer made her chest feel tight. "You didn't pay with liquor?" she said. "No," he replied. "That would have been an insult to you." She stared at him, searching for any trick, hidden meaning, or fake kindness. But she saw only truth. "I don't know who I am," she said finally. "Remember?" He answered, "And even if you don't, you can still decide who you want to be." Girl looked away. She wasn't ready for these words. They were too strange, too heavy, like they didn't belong in her world. She didn't sleep that night. She sat in the corner watching shadows and blinking lights, but the human didn't lock the door. He didn't chain her wrist. Instead, he slept across the room, one arm behind his head and a blanket thrown over his body. She stared at the door for a long time. It was unlocked. She stood up slowly. Her legs were weak but working. She took 2 steps forward toward the exit. Her bare feet made no sound. She reached for the button to open the door. Then she stopped. Her fingers hovered in the air. Something inside her screamed to run far from here, back into the black void, where at least she understood pain better than peace. But another part, quieter but stronger, told her to wait. She looked over her shoulder. The human had shifted in his sleep. His face looked peaceful, like someone who carried deep sadness but had chosen to rest anyway. She lowered her hand and sat back down, hugging her knees. In the morning, he didn't ask her why she didn't run. Instead, he handed her warm food and a clean shirt. Something plain but fresh. The girl held the cloth in her hands, shocked. "This is for me." "Yes," he said. "Why?" "Because you're not trash." She didn't cry, but something inside her cracked. Later, they landed on a dusty moon, a small outpost not watched by governments or patrols there. The human traded parts from his ship for more food and supplies. He came back and handed her a soft pair of boots. "Your feet need protection," he said. She put them on slowly, surprised that they fit. "Are you going to sell me again?" she asked. He looked at her with calm eyes and said, "I don't deal in people. I deal in broken things that can still work." She didn't know if that was meant to be kind or cruel, but she didn't feel hurt by it. That night she spoke again, more words this time. "You still haven't told me your name." He smiled, leaning back against the ship's wall. "Call me Morgan." She nodded slowly, then looked down. "I don't remember my name." "That's all right," Morgan said. "You'll learn one when you're ready." And somehow that made her feel less empty. Out in space, the stars didn't stop shining, but now for the first time they looked less cold to her. She didn't understand everything about Morgan or why he had chosen her, but for now she had boots, food, water, and most strange of all, a choice. She chose to stay. Her first real choice. The ship drifted through quiet sectors of space, far from patrol zones or slave markets. No one followed, no one cared. And for the first time in her life, the girl didn't feel watched by cruel eyes. She now wore the boots he gave her and the simple clean shirt that smelled like sunlight and soap. They felt strange against her skin, not heavy like slave cloth, but light like the air around her. Morgan didn't say much during the journey. He fixed wires, ran checks, read a small digital pad, and once in a while asked if she wanted more food. He didn't treat her like a servant or a project. He treated her like she was simply there. She didn't understand it. One day he opened a locker and took out a small weapon, checked its power cell, and then looked at her. "We'll be landing soon," he said. "Not all places are friendly. Stay close if you want to." If you want to, those words again. No command, just a choice. She watched the door for a while, wondering if he'd still stop her if she ran. Then she remembered the open door from before and the way he never shouted, never grabbed, never even looked angry. She was used to fear, but now she was confused. When they landed, the wind outside was sharp and full of red dust. Morgan handed her a scarf for her mouth and eyes. She wrapped it around her face and followed him down the ramp. The settlement was small metal huts and tents arranged in circles. The locals were not human or her kind, but a mix of insect-like and lizard-skin traders. They gave her cold glances, but none spoke. Morgan traded parts again and got a few supplies. He even gave away something valuable for a small medkit. The girl wondered why he would do that. "Just in case I bleed," she thought. After they returned to the ship, he sat down and leaned back, arms crossed. "You're strong," he said, watching her. "You notice details before I do sometimes. You could be something more than what they made you into." She didn't reply. He tapped the side of his boot with a slow rhythm and then asked, "Why did you come back that night?" She looked down at her hands, thin fingers now clean but still shaking. "Sometimes I don't know," she said softly. "Maybe because you left the door open." "That's not a reason," Morgan replied. "Not really." She raised her head. "I didn't want to die out there." "Not yet." "Good," he said. "That means you still want something." "That's enough for now." She sat across from him on the floor. The silence was not heavy this time, but soft like space between stars. After a moment she asked, "Why me? You didn't know me. You could have picked anyone or walked away." He thought for a moment, then answered, "Because I saw someone who was still alive behind the eyes, and because no one else did." She stared at him. His words were simple, but something deep in her chest shifted. The next day something changed. A signal pinged in the ship, a distress call nearby. "Small cargo vessel under attack by raiders. We shouldn't get involved," Morgan muttered, but he was already setting course. They arrived too late. The raiders were gone. The cargo ship was damaged, half burned, but still floating. They found one survivor inside, hiding under wreckage, bleeding and shaking, a child with scales on his face and wide black eyes. Morgan lifted him carefully and brought him aboard. The girl watched from a corner, arms crossed, heart beating fast. The boy was afraid, but Morgan spoke gently, cleaned his wounds, and wrapped him in a blanket, just like he had done for her. "He's safe now," Morgan said to the boy over and over. Later the girl stood by the door, watching as the boy slept. "Why do you keep helping people?" she asked. "Because someone once helped me," Morgan said, "and I didn't believe I deserved it either." She looked at the child, then at Morgan, and asked, "Do you think I can help someone too?" He smiled. "Yes, you already are." "You stayed." The words hit her like soft lightning. That night, while Morgan was asleep, she sat beside the boy. He opened his eyes slowly and reached for her hand. She didn't pull away. She stayed until morning. When Morgan woke up, he saw her sitting beside the boy, her back straight, her eyes focused but gentle. She had made a choice not to run, not to hide, but to stay and protect something small and fragile. And somewhere deep in her forgotten memory, a voice whispered, "This is what you used to be. This is what you can be again." The past she hides. The boy left 2 days later. Morgan had arranged a transport to take him to a safe colony where his people still lived. The girl stood at the edge of the ramp, watching him go. His small scaled fingers waved as the door closed and the ship rose into the sky. She didn't wave back, but something inside her felt lighter. Morgan watched her quietly from behind and spoke as the ship vanished. "You protected him like a soldier." She turned toward him slowly, her face unreadable. "I'm not a soldier," she said, her voice firm but distant. "Maybe not now," he replied, "but your reflexes say otherwise." She said nothing. That evening, as the stars blinked outside the window, the girl sat alone near the back of the ship, her knees pulled to her chest. The food packet in her hand was still untouched. Her eyes stared at the wall, but her mind was far away. Morgan approached, slowly carrying 2 steaming cups. He handed her one and sat down beside her without asking. He didn't speak at first, letting the silence settle. Then he said, "I've seen the way you move when danger's near. Always the exit in your sight, always. You're back to a wall, you don't just survive. You prepare." She looked down at the cup, then finally said, "I was trained to." Morgan didn't press for more. He just nodded as if he already guessed. The past came back to her in flashes, not words. She remembered. Metal halls, screams in dark rooms, commands shouted in languages she no longer wanted to understand. She remembered standing in line with others, weapons in their hands, collars around their necks, being told they were chosen, not own, but it was all the same. She was taken young before she even knew what home meant, raised to fight, trained to obey, broken when she disobeyed and rebuilt when she broke again. She remembered her own hands covered in blood. Not always her anemia. At night her body shook in sleep. Her breathing grew fast, her fingers clenched around the blanket. Morgan heard the sounds and moved to her side. He didn't shake her awake. He sat down slowly and spoke in a low, steady voice. "It's not real. Not anymore, you're not." There her eyes flew open, her skin damp with sweat. She looked around, ready to strike, but found only his calm face watching her, no fear in his eyes. She lowered her hand slowly. "You were dreaming," he said, but it didn't sound like a question. She nodded. "Barely. Do you want to talk about it?" "No, okay." He stood to leave, but her voice stopped him. "They took everything from me. My name, my memories, my voice, even my fear. Then they gave me orders and told me that was all I needed." Morgan turned around. "Do you want to take it back?" She looked up at him and said, "I don't even know where to start." "Start here." He said, "You're already more than what they made you into." She looked down again. "I don't know how to be anything else." "You don't have to know, you just have to try." The next day Morgan handed her a short blade. The grip warned, the edge sharp. "I won't teach you to fight," he said. "I think you already know too much about that, but I'll teach you to protect." She hesitated, then took the blade in her hand. Her fingers closed around it like it had always belonged there. They practiced together in the empty storage bay. Morgan showed her defensive stances, how to disarm, not destroy, how to hold ground, not charge forward. She learned fast, too fast. Her body remembered moves her mind wanted to forget, but there was something different now. She wasn't being screamed at. There were no collars, no pain for failure, only quiet corrections and calm instruction. Morgan didn't flinch when she moved fast. He didn't raise his voice when she made mistakes. "You're not fighting to win anymore," he said. "You're protecting something now, maybe even yourself." At night she stood in front of the mirror in the crew room for a long time. Her face looked the same, silver skin, metal-like hair, golden eyes, but her eyes no longer looked dead. She remembered the boy's tiny hand wrapped around hers, and Morgan's words about choices. For the first time she whispered something to her. Reflection, "I don't want to forget everything." Girl in the mirror didn't look like a weapon anymore. She looked like someone learning how to be human again. Her value revealed. They landed on a green moon covered with deep forests and sharp mountains. The locals called it Rivala 6, a place where old battles were forgotten and peace was traded like currency. Morgan had business here. He said it would be simple trade, spare parts for fuel and supplies, but nothing was ever simple when your past followed like a shadow. She wore the same boots Morgan had given her, though now she had added armor plates across her arms and chest. He never asked where she got them. She didn't say, but they were old, scratched, and fit her too perfectly. The market was open in the valley between cliffs. Crowds of different species moved between stalls, buying food, tools, and strange alien pets. The girl followed Morgan closely. Her eyes scanned every face, every movement. Her hand rested near the short blade on her hip. "Just in case you're doing it again," Morgan said without looking back. Doing what she asked. "You're searching for exits in a peaceful place." She didn't answer, but she didn't stop either. They reached a tech stall, and Morgan began negotiating with an old reptilian merchant. She stood quietly behind him, watching the crowd. That's when it happened. A tall armored figure stopped mid-step and stared at her. Its helmet reflected sunlight, and for a moment, she couldn't see the eyes behind the visor, but she felt it. The shift in air, the silent tension of someone recognizing her. Then 2 more armored soldiers appeared beside him, speaking into coms in a language she hadn't heard in years, but her body remembered it like a cold slap across the soul. The badge on their chest, the silver fang above a broken crown. Her legs stepped back on their own. Her fingers touched the blade. Morgan noticed the change in her face and turned fast. "What is it?" he asked. Before she could speak, a loud voice echoed across the market. "Seize her now." The soldiers rushed forward, but she moved faster. In 3 steps she had pulled Morgan back. Behind a stall, flipped a vendor's table and crouched low. Blade ready, heart pounding, not with fear, but with something older, something burning. Morgan looked at her. She nodded once. He understood. He pulled a small shock grenade from his coat, tossed it over the table, and ducked. Seconds later, a bright blue flash and loud crack scattered the attacker's run. She shouted, but he didn't. More soldiers came from the far side shouting commands. The market was in chaos. People ran screaming, pushing past each other, trying to escape the sudden storm. Morgan stayed beside her. They fought together, blade and shock blast side by side. Her movements were sharp, clean, perfect. Each enemy that came close was disarmed, not killed. Her eyes were alive with fire, but they were outnumbered, cornered behind a broken fruit stand. Then an old voice shouted from above, "Stop, she is not your prisoner." All heads turned. A tall female alien in a white and gold robe stepped forward, flanked by guards of her own. The crowd parted for her. She looked at the girl with eyes wide in shock and awe. "It is you," she whispered softly into the silence. The soldiers froze, uncertain. The robed alien stepped closer, hands raised in peace. "You were declared dead," she said. "We searched the ashes of the palace. I survived," the girl said, her voice stronger than before. Morgan looked at her, confused. "You know them?" he asked. She didn't take her eyes off the woman, but answered softly, "I was the last royal protector of House Valera, sworn to guard the bloodline. My name, my real name, is Serana." Morgan stared at her, stunned. The woman bowed deeply. "You were a legend. Even as a child, trained beyond your years. They broke our empire when they captured you. We never stopped." Mourning, Serana's jaw tightened. "They broke everything because I failed." "No," the woman said firmly. "They feared you, so they buried your memory." One of the soldiers stepped forward, still confused. "She was a slave, sold cheap to a human. How could she be?" "Silence," the woman snapped. "She is worth more than all of us combined." Morgan placed a hand on Serana's shoulder. She didn't flinch this time. "What do you want to do?" he asked her quietly. She looked around at the frightened crowd, the broken market, the guards and soldiers still unsure what was true. Then she said something no one expected. "I want to go back." "Back where?" Morgan asked. "To where it all ended," she said. "To where I lost everything." The woman bowed again and handed her a device. A location. A vault buried beneath the ruins of the fallen palace. Serana held it in her hands and looked at Morgan. "Will you come with me?" He smiled and said, "I didn't fly all this way just for fuel." As they walked back to the ship side by side, everyone moved out of their way. No longer a slave, no longer broken. Serana was rising from the ashes, and this time she wasn't alone. One last auction. Coordinates led them across dead space to a forgotten world once known as the heart of House Valera. Now it was nothing but blackened stone and twisted metal. The city that once stood proud was now buried under layers of ash and memories. Serana stared at the ruins from the ship's window. Her hand tightened around the small device the priestess had given her. It pulsed, slowly guiding them to a hidden vault beneath the palace's broken throne room. Morgan piloted the ship in silence, letting her think he didn't ask questions. He didn't need to. They landed on the edge of the ruins and moved quietly through collapsed arches and cracked marble statues. Serana walked ahead with steady feet. Her eyes scanned the shadows, not with fear, but with a growing purpose. She remembered this place. She remembered running through its halls as A child before she was taken before the Empire burned, she remembered training with guards 3 times her size and winning, but she also remembered fire. The vault was hidden under the old throne's foundation, a code older than most systems unlocked. The stone floor with a grinding echo inside was darkness but not silence. Motion lights clicked on revealing armor stands. Weapons, relics, and scrolls untouched by time. At the center sat a throne of glass and gold. Serana walked to it slowly. She placed her hand on the armrest and felt the vault recognize her. A soft hum echoed. A panel opened, revealing something she never thought she'd see again. Her real armor, black silver trimmed, elegant, but sharp like a blade made for war. She stared at it, not moving. "You going to wear it?" Morgan asked softly. She didn't speak. Instead, she began removing her borrowed clothes piece by piece, replacing them with pieces of who she used to be. Her movements were steady, like someone preparing for battle, but not against an enemy, against a memory. When she stood tall, fully armored, Morgan couldn't help but stare. She looked like a queen and a storm both at once. He opened his mouth to speak, but the vault's alert system blared. "Red unidentified ship approaching." Morgan rushed to the controls on the wall, pulling up the feed. One large vessel marked with a familiar logo. It was the same trader who sold her for a bottle of liquor, only this time he wasn't selling, he was hunting outside. The ship landed roughly. Soldiers spilled out fast, no time for negotiation. The trader marched between them, dressed in a jeweled cloak, his voice loud over the speakers. "Return my property," he shouted, "or watch this planet turn to dust." Morgan's jaw tightened. "He thinks he still owns you." Serana walked toward the exit without a word. "Wait," Morgan said. "What's the plan?" She turned her head slightly, her golden eyes glowing beneath the helmet. "I'm going to remind him what I'm worth." She stepped out into the open ruins alone. The traders' men raised their weapons, but the trader raised a hand. "Wait," he said. "Let her come. She probably wants to beg." Serana walked right up to him and stopped only a few feet away. "I remember you," she said. "You laughed when you sold me. You said I was broken. You were." The trader sneered. "And I was kind enough to take you off that pile of trash." Serana slowly reached up and unclipped her helmet, letting it fall to the ground. Soldiers froze because now they saw her face, not dirty, not bruised, but clear, strong, regal. Her silver skin shimmered, her golden eyes burned with power. "I was never broken," she said. "You just couldn't see beyond the chains." The trader stepped back but tried to recover. "You re just a slave in armor. You can't." He didn't finish because Serana moved in a flash. She took down the nearest soldier, twisted his weapon, and used it to disable the second. Her body moved with practiced control, every strike exact, every motion elegant. Morgan stepped out, firing a warning blast into the air. Then another. Then another. The ruins became a battlefield for only a minute, then it was over. The trader was on the ground begging for mercy. His men scattered, some dropped their weapons and ran. Serana stood over him, blade at his throat. "This is your last auction," she said quietly. He whimpered, "Please, don't kill me." "I'm not going to," she replied. "I don't deal in death." She stepped back, turned, and walked away. Morgan followed quietly. As they climbed back onto the ship, Morgan asked, "Why did you let him go?" "Because I'm not a weapon anymore," she said. "And I don't need his blood to know who I am." As the ship lifted off, the ruined city below faded into distance, and Serana, no longer slave, no longer forgotten, stood beside Morgan, not as cargo, not as a project, but as an equal, and her past could no longer chain her to the ground. More than worthy. The stars outside the ship blinked like 1,000 soft echoes of the past, but inside, the silence was peaceful. Serana sat on the edge of the control platform, armor off, wearing only a dark undersuit now patched in places. Her short blade rested beside her, but she hadn't touched it since they left the ruined world. Morgan stepped out of the sleeping quarters, holding 2 mugs of something hot, and handed one to her without a word. She took it gently, sipping it slowly. They hadn't spoken much in the last few hours. The vault was behind them. The trader was gone. The empire she once protected was dust. And yet, she had never felt more alive. He finally broke the silence. "You never told me how it ended." The first temp Sarana kept her eyes on the stars for a long moment. I failed my final mission, she said softly. I was meant to protect the last bloodline. When the palace fell, I was separated from the heirs. I fought until I collapsed, and when I woke, I was already in chains. Morgan leaned back in his chair. You didn't fail. They just didn't let you finish. Sarana looked at him and smiled slightly. The first real smile that wasn't forced, wasn't shadowed by pain. And you, Morgan. Why do you help people like me? He gave a quiet laugh and looked into his mug. Because someone once helped me when I didn't think I was worth anything. I tried to drink myself into a hole after the war. One person pulled me out. Never got to thank her properly. Sarana didn't need to ask who she was. She saw it in his eyes. So now you travel the stars fixing broken things, she said gently. Sometimes people, sometimes ships, sometimes both. She reached into her belt pouch and pulled out the royal insignia she'd taken from the vault, an emblem of House Valera, dulled with age but still beautiful. She held it out toward him. This belonged to the line I swore to protect, she said. It was meant to be given to someone worthy. But there is no one left to wear it now. He looked at the symbol, unsure what to say. You saved me from being forgotten, she whispered. You gave me food, a name, and most importantly, a choice. I didn't remember my past, but I felt human again. Because of you, he didn't take the emblem instead. He took her hand. He didn't rescue you, Sarana. You rescued yourself. I was just there when it happened. Their eyes met, his filled with quiet honesty, hers glowing with strength that no longer came from training but from healing. What now? She asked. I'm not a protector anymore, not a soldier, not a slave. What do I become? Whatever you want, he said. You're not bound by anything anymore. A silence passed between them, but it wasn't empty. It was full of hope, of new beginnings that comes. Console blinked suddenly, a message coming in. An old channel rarely used. Morgan tapped the screen. It was from the colony where they had sent the scaled boy. A request for help. Raiders again, Sarana said, reading the message. Not a surprise. She looked at Morgan. Do we go? He raised an eyebrow. You tell me. You're not following me anymore. You choose. She stood, stretched, picked up her blade, and smiled. Then, let's go show them what a so-called broken slave can do. As the ship turned toward its new heading, Sarana strapped in at the co-pilot seat. She didn't wear the old armor anymore. She didn't need it. Her strength wasn't in metal plates or royal vows. It was in choice. It was in the quiet fire in her chest that could never be chained again. And as the engines roared into life, the stars ahead welcomed her like old friends. She was no longer just a survivor. She was Saranand. She had finally remembered her worth.